Hello, Culver City. Welcome to the next installation of Conversations with Freddie. Today we are focusing on National Coming Out Day. It's also October is LGBTQ History Month, so there's a lot going on this month. I'm proud to have been endorsed by Equality California, the Victory Fund, and by the Stonewall Democratic Club. All three organizations are dedicated to advancing the rights of LGBTQ community. Today, I'm really excited to have a panel discussion. Part of my campaign platform is really having conversations on different types of topics to bring people together to accomplish goals. My campaign is committed to protecting renters and their rights, preventing displacement and homelessness, reimagining public safety, and reinvesting in our community, creating safer streets and more connectivity throughout our city, and reducing our carbon footprint and protecting our planet. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panel of guest speakers to talk about this very important topic on National Coming Out Day and the LGBTQ experience. So welcome to the panel, thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
The coming out is an incredibly personal and unique experience for every person, but sharing those stories is also incredibly powerful to hear those stories, for other people to hear them. Would you be willing to share your coming out experience or what coming out means to you? And we'll start first with Adam Fingerhut.
First of all, thank you for having this event and for having this conversation in the context of what's going on locally in Culver City. So I'm Adam Fingerhut. I am a psychology professor at Loyola Marymount University. My husband and I have a first grader at Linwood Howe Elementary in Culver City. So it's fascinating to think about coming out. I came out almost 30 years ago now. It was 1991. I was 17 years old. And the context was very conservative, Phoenix, Arizona. Again, in the early 90s, this was before Will and Grace was on TV, before Ellen was on TV. There weren't many representations of what it was to be gay and what a life looked like for a gay person. And just very briefly, I had, sort of almost an epiphany that this is who I was, and shared it with my parents at the time. And I remember always being supported by them. There was never a moment of rejection. They supported me, loved me for me. But at the same time, I think for all of us, I sort of announced it, and then we kind of went back into the closet again, because at the time there weren't great models for how to live out and proud and open. And so that's something that took a while to get to. I think it's interesting looking at young people now and having some assumption that it's so much easier for them. And to realize that in many cases it's not, right? That coming out, acknowledging that you are different than many of the people around you, I think still carries some of the same challenges as it did, 30 years ago. So, yeah.
Next, Lucky Fuller.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucky Alexander, and I am the founder of Invisible Men. Thank you, Freddie, for having me. Also sit on the Trans Advisory Council for LA City. Coming out for me was interesting because, I came out in kind of like two parts. I came out, well, I didn't actually come out. I kind of was dragged out of the closet when I was around 18, and my parents just kind of happened to find out. And then that's kind of coming out as a lesbian, but then coming out as trans was interesting. It was different because one, I'm a Black guy, and I didn't tell my parents till I was maybe 6-7 months on T. before they even knew I was trans. And coming out to the rest of my community was cool, but something like what Adam was saying about not seeing that reflection of what it looks like to be a thriving um, black trans guy wasn't there. The narrative wasn't there. Um, so I've had to find what that looks like to find community and figure out who I was and figure all those things out. But it led me to a lot of the work that I do within the community now.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Caleb Green.
I've been out for 3 years now, 3 years, 2 years now, maybe somewhere in between. I didn't get the option to come out to my dad. I was actually outed by someone who was close to me. It was very scary. My dad is a black man, and so we were sitting at the couch, and in like black families, it's a little bit more difficult because we don't have a lot of representation for just gay culture and gay people in general. So, and also with religion, it's a lot more just, it's different. Everybody's coming out experience is different. So he sat me down on a couch and he was like, "Are you a homosexual?" And I will never forget that for the rest of my life. But what I can say, the good part about it is that I don't think I ever would have come out, and I got to be a lot closer to my dad actually, which I didn't expect at all. I was expecting my dad to not be that close to me and very much wouldn't accept me. And even though things could definitely still be a lot better, I am close to my dad in that part because we see each other eye to eye. We see each other human being to human being, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you, Caleb. That's really powerful. And last but not least, Keo.
Hi guys, my name is Keo Tano. I am a school teacher at Culver City High School. I've been there since 2007, and for the past 6 or 7 years, I've been the advisor for the Tolerance Club at CCHS, and this is a club for gay and lesbian students, LGBTQ plus students, I should say. Coming out, it's hard to define when coming out is because, you have coming out to yourself, and then you also have coming out to other people. And even when you're coming out to other people, you have different levels of coming out to other people. For example, I came out to a lot of my friends before I came out to my family. I came out to myself when I was a child, but convinced myself that I would never come out to anybody else. I grew up in a very strong LDS Mormon family, and I actually had to leave my family and move away to a different state just to feel safe enough to be able to come out. And it took many years for me. Very scary thing. And the reason why it's scary is because you don't know what people's reactions were, or you do know what their reactions are going to be. And in my case, a lot of the reactions that I thought were going to happen actually did happen. So sometimes I feel really happy. Sometimes when I see other people's stories, especially on movies where they tell their parents, "Oh, I'm gay," and the first thing their parents say is, "We love you anyway." I'm like, oh, so lucky for those people, because not everybody has that experience. And, I've lost friends, I've gained friends, and the coming out process is like a multiple step process, like going from yourself. But for me, I think to answer what does it mean to you, I think it's when you release that fear of who you are. And I think that you get to a point where you're not scared anymore to tell people. You're not scared if people find out, because in the beginning, it's a very scary thing. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Those are all wonderful stories. I also wanted to let everyone know that Lalo Moreno was supposed to be on the panel discussion today. Unfortunately, they are not able to attend, but they are sorely missed. For me, coming out was a difficult process. I grew up in a very conservative and religious environment, so I was really conflicted in the way I was, the way I interpreted my religion and my faith made me feel like there was something wrong. So it was a painful process. That once I came out, it was so liberating, but also mixed, because there was different perceptions. When I told my sister, I thought that she would, be very upset with me and get angry with me. And she's like, yeah, I kind of knew. Do you want to go see a movie? Not the reaction I was thinking from, but thinking that would happen. But then when I told my parents, a much different story, and it was a lifelong process of coming to terms with that. I'm really trying to find that level of understanding, and definite ebb and flow. But I do think it's an act of courage to come out, to be proud for who you are and who you love. So thank you for sharing all that. I think it was really, really encouraging. I want to focus on KO and Caleb. KO works at Culver City High School, and Caleb is a junior at Culver City High School. And they both do work with the Tolerance Club. And I just would ask if both of you, either of you, could share a little bit about the club and its purpose and where you think it's going.
Okay, so we are the Tolerance Club, started back in the 90s by original LGBTQ activist, Judy Sanderson, and she has retired and I took over her place. But the Tolerance Club started because the kids needed a safe space. And it was actually a secret club back then. And you had to be referred in order to figure out when the time and location that they met, because, you know, the kids were very much bullied. It was not a safe place for them to be. And it progressed. Luckily at Culver City High School, we've progressed where now we don't need to be a secret club. We have standing room only. There are tons and tons of students. And what's interesting is that the demographics have changed throughout the years. Now we're very proud to have lots of transgender students. We love that because they feel safe to come and express themselves. And along with gay students, we have all kinds of gay students. Caleb is proud of his femme side and his makeup, and there's students who are all over the place, and we love it. The purpose of our Tolerance Club is to educate. And when I say educate, I mean both the students and the school, because a lot of these children are young and they don't know that much about being LGBTQ. They don't know about culture, they don't know about history, they don't know about sex and all these kinds of things. And so we want to educate and help them progress through what they're needing at the time. And then also awareness for the rest of the school, awareness for the teachers and the other straight allies, homophobic students, everybody. We want to give a lot of awareness, and that's kind of what we do as a Tolerance Club. Caleb?
I wanted to bounce off something that Dr. Thomas said, saying that that we're here. Having the club is it's a presence. So people get to know that we are here, we are alive, we are students, and it creates exposure. And with exposure, that creates normalization for all the students around us. And more importantly, the part that I love the most is that it's a safe space. It's where we can all just relax and literally be as gay as we want and as happy as we want. And we get to just talk, chit chat, hang out for lunch on a Friday and enjoy ourselves. I mean, it's everything. I love it. So I really much enjoy having that space and where we can provide to just be there for each other as gay individuals.
Well, it sounds like you talked about this a little, but what do you think the climate's like for the LGBTQ community, and what additional resources are needed, if any?
I can tackle this one first. The climate at the school, I'd very much there are safe potholes, but you have to navigate your way there. Otherwise, the school definitely could use some revamping. Probably every day I'll go in the hallway and walk and hear someone either yell faggot or say no homo, or just say homophobic slurs all the time. You get to a point where you're used to it though. It's not like just debilitating, but it's also very much discouraging just to be an individual and have people disrespect you every day. There are those potholes I was talking about where you find those groups and those people who will accept you for who you are and who will push you to be your best self. And for our school, I genuinely think that there just needs to be teaching about gay history, gay culture, and gay sex, because we do not learn in sex ed about gay sex. They just if you ask a teacher a question, they'll kind of bounce around it. And it goes back to that topic of exposure equals normalization, because if people actually learn like, oh, this is a real thing, and stop taking it as a joke or stop taking it as taboo, then people really understand that these are our lives and we matter just as much, so we should be taught our history just as well. And also, of course, more mental health programs. We could always use more mental health programs.
As much as the culture has changed at Culver City, we still have a long way to go. And what I would like to see is really movement from the top down, meaning like right now, a lot of the push comes from the students. And, you know, if you think about every other topic and need in a school, it comes from teachers but in this case, it's not coming from the teachers, and not anything against the teachers. It's just that that's not in their frame, you know? And so in order for culture to change, we want to impress upon the adults of the school, because I'm an adult, so I'm looking at from the adult lens, is, you know, it should be everybody moving to change the culture. Does every teacher, administrator, district leader know about pronouns? Do they know the vocabulary? Are they familiar with the culture? Do they include that in their curriculum? Because we're a school, everything starts at the school level. And the teachers need to be at the forefront for our students. And that's what I would like to see. I would like to see students in their teachers in their curriculums, including the LGBTQ population and what is common to them and what they need to see. They, like Caleb said, normalization, exposure, and education. So being that we are a school, education is a huge part that we definitely need a lot more of. As far as resources, the kids need a lot of help. They need a lot of resources, mental health resources, and resources outside of school as well. Places they can go to and whatnot. And there are some, and there are places they can go to, but we of course need more.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree that education and did you have something to say, add to that, Caleb? Or
something that students tell me all the time is that they will go across the school just to use the restroom in the nurse's office because that's a gender neutral bathroom. I think that's so ridiculous, and that students tell me all the time that their teachers yell at them because they're late to class because they have to walk all the way across the school to use a bathroom. I think that's wild. And the idea of gender neutral bathrooms are kind of pushed down upon at our school, but I really do think that that is something that is very important for my friends.
Mm-hmm. Very important. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for including that. That's really important. Education and exposure are so important. They reduce the stigma, they normalize things. If elected, I know that right now, a lot of times the school board district doesn't work necessarily a lot with the city council. And if elected, I'd really want to increase that and look at ways that we can really collaborate, especially, you know, with mental health resources and some of these other things. So. Well, sticking in the theme with the school district, Adam, as you mentioned, you and your husband have a daughter in first grade at Lynn Howe. Can you share a little bit about what that experience is like and what you perceive to be the opportunities and challenges of being a family that has two dads in Culver City?
I mean, it's interesting talking about this topic on National Coming Out Day because I think often coming out can be construed as a single event. You know, it's my big coming out moment. And as Ko suggested, it's a process that occurs and recurs over time. And there's a new chapter in my life regarding coming out now that we have a child. And it's not that our family, as a family led by two dads, is a secret, I think, to anybody, right? Our names are on the forms. They see Adam, they see Stuart, but we do have to, every year, schedule an appointment with the teacher to sit down and educate the teacher about our family structure, to ensure not just that there isn't discriminatory practices or language being used in the classroom, but that there is proactive inclusion of our family in the classroom, that our daughter can see her family reflected in the curriculum, in the books they're reading. And so, you know, again, that's an interesting coming out experience to embrace and to have, that in many ways is no longer about me. And it's not really about my coming out and my needs, it's about my daughter and her needs as, I don't know how she'll identify as she grows up, but certainly she will always have to identify as part of a family with queer individuals in it, and as a child of two dads. We are, to my knowledge, the only family in the school led by two dads. There are definitely families with that are lesbian mom-headed households, but to our knowledge, we're the only one that is made up of gay dads, and potentially in the history of the school. And so in that sense, there again are these issues of visibility, issues of representation. We are very much accepted by the school community, but I think it's always important for people to know that when you are in the minority such as this, right, to the degree of like literally being the only family in the school, there is a stress that comes with that. There is, again, a sense of needing to educate other people, just the very sense of differentness itself can be stressful. And so we're navigating that for our daughter, we're navigating that for ourselves. We've loved the school. I'm on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee with the hopes of pushing equity and inclusion broadly and for everybody. I think there are many, many ways in which our school district can grow in this area as we as a nation are reckoning with what it means to be more inclusive, to be more equitable. So yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely in that at the nation and even at the citywide level, Culver City, we're engaged in all these issues of equity. How do we provide equitable, education, but also city services, help for that need the help, and how do we really put in services and resources for those things.
Yeah, and what I would say to that again is I think it's probably the case that when we think about LGBTQ plus issues, we tend to think of those of us with the identity and the services and the visibility for those with the identity. And part of the equation is to also recognize that in Culver City, there are families with children who may not identify as LGBTQ plus, but whose parents do. And they are part of that fabric as well. And their stories need to be told. Again, their presence needs to be known and attended to.
Yeah, it's a definite ripple effect, and really important. What a great asset to Culver City in general, to really have access and exposure to all these different types.
And that's definitely the plus. You said, like, what's the benefit? Like, it's wonderful to see Lucy's classmates know about Lucy's two dads, and in many ways, like, not blink at that. It's just Daddy Adam and Daddy Stu, and they know that. And so I see that as the real, the real blessing of it, is kind of looking to that next generation and seeing, again, I think Caleb mentioned the sort of normalizing of these things. And you can really see that, with our presence in the school. So we've embraced that, and, we're excited about that as well.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Lucky Alexander, who is a council member for the Trans Advisory in LA City and the founder of Invisible Men. What kind of work is being done in LA City for the trans community, and what are the main areas of opportunity in serving that community?
Well, within the city of LA and a lot of the outlying cities, there's a lot of different organizations that are working towards one thing in particular. My organization does, especially around like resounding around what everyone has said so far around visibility and representation and all of that. So, Invisible Men is an organization that allows trans men, centering trans men of color, to be able to hold their narrative and really have that control and tell their own stories. We allow them to tell their stories, but we also link them to several different resources within their respective areas. So we have different clusters around the world, but we have our largest one here in LA. Also, we have the Ahmad Institute does a lot of work around substance abuse and helping folks get linked to services through that. Work around mental health services is being done through APLA and Trans Connections. They have a really dope program with Trans Connections. They service folks between 16 and 29. So like all of our youth that are coming up and need mental health or support groups and all of those other things that are necessary for our trans youth to help them thrive, right? And then, you know, like we have Men's Health Foundation has medical facilities, but they have an OBGYN within their clinics for, you know, our trans men or trans masculine folks that still need to be seen, and those things need to be cared for. So there's a lot of different organizations that are working together, as well as like the Trans Advisory Council itself. We do work around policy and what that looks like for trans folks within the city of LA. So there's several different organizations that are doing a lot of different types of work that are, you know, partnered in to do all of these things. And I think the best way to support the work that's being done by a lot of these organizations is really just that, supporting them, whether it be monetarily or, you know, reaching out and volunteering time or any of the other resources that you may have, like volunteer those for those organizations to help a lot of those folks, you know, thrive and move on. And this is all about bettering the quality of life for trans folks within the city, right? And otherwise. But I definitely think that if we have folks out there that are looking to be allies to the trans community, really reach out to those organizations, find out what those communities need, because those organizations also may also tailor to different intersections of what it looks like to be trans. So whether those intersections lie on the intersection of gender and race or age or, you know, different ables and all of those different things. But definitely reach out to those organizations, reach out to those folks and find out like what does that organization or what does that community need before you say, here, we're gonna give you this. Because I think as an ally or any of those folks that are wanting to be allies, ask questions first, find out, do the research about those communities first before you just say, here, I'm gonna give you this. It doesn't fit, but be grateful. And you know, that's unfair sometimes. So definitely really do your research, reach out to some folks, ask questions, and that's how folks can best serve and support the trans community.
Yeah, so important to talk about intersectionality. And we know that racism, sexism, and even homophobia and transphobia still exists within the LGBTQ community. And this is a question for everyone or anyone. In what ways do you see this still playing out, and how do we address them in order to create a more inclusive community?
Well, for me, the intersection is played out within the racial movement that's going on right now, in the ways that we had trans folks in Black Lives Matter protests that were beaten and were, you know, hurt within the protest by other Black folks, right? So I think that the intersectionalities of being Black and LGBT also play out in, you know, like to this day. So the racism and all of those different pieces, and that's why it was necessary for the All Black Lives Matter march and the mural that came before it. So all of those different pieces, I think, are really at the forefront right now in everyone's mind because it is a racial tension that's going on, and Black folks are being left out, and even more so, Black LGBT folks are really being left out of those conversations. And then, if we go even further, right, Black trans folks are being left out. So I think that if folks could just respect all intersectionalities and where they land within that, then this could probably work out a little bit better.
I think it's also about finding commonalities and recognizing each other as part of the same community rather than something, because we say LGBTQ plus and we call it our community, one community, but the reason why a lot of these things occur, this racism, sexism, is because a lot of people don't consider the other person a part of their community because they're focusing on how different they are. Like, I'm gay, but I'm not gay femme. That's them, not me. Or I'm this, but I'm not that. And so when you're looking at how different people are, and then you're focusing on the difference rather than on the commonality. The other part I thought was like, and it all comes from trauma as well, right? Because when you think about racism and homophobia, it's less about them and more about you. If you're racist, if you're homophobic, it's less about the gay person and really more about you. So why do you have that? Why did you develop this? And a lot of times it comes from trauma. And with our students, they experience a lot of trauma, and you would think, their trauma is different because they didn't go through what we went through as older people. Like, oh, they didn't have to live through like being totally closeted. But they have different things that they're living through. For example, social media. We were afraid of what our parents thought or what people said in church. So now maybe they're not afraid of their parents or church, but they're afraid of the 1,000 people on social media that are looking at them and what are they saying, right? So there's still that fear, there's still that trauma, they're still dealing with a lot of the same things, these youth. And so, because of that, it's still creating racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia.
And I'll add that I think for white gay people, there is a need in this moment to thoroughly interrogate whiteness. And I know for myself, for a very long time, I distanced myself from my whiteness because I'm gay. And so I could easily say, well, yes, I'm white, but I'm not that white man, right? Because I'm a gay man. And as I've grown more aware of the racial justice movement and become a part of it, I've come to see how unfair that is for me to do, right? That I still benefit from my whiteness. And yes, there are challenges that come with being gay and so on and so forth, but that doesn't take away from the benefits I get from my whiteness. And so, again, to distance myself from that and to ignore really deeply interrogating that doesn't allow us, again, I think, to have that cohesive community and doesn't allow us to do enough to really dismantle the system as it currently exists.
I really appreciate that, Adam.
You would think that Eurocentric ideologies would kind of take a hold when it enters the gay community, but they kind of just seep right in. Something that I see all the time, and I probably will keep on saying in my life, is the representation of gay families. It's almost always like very fit white gay couple, gay men or gay women, just living their best life and like at a park or I don't know, wherever they're showing it. And it's almost like there's that part of me, I'm like, oh my God, yes, they're gay. Yeah, I love that. And I'm also like, why are they always only white? Why are they always fit? Why is it always a young man and a much older man? It's like, there's so many facets to people in general. Why would you narrow it down just to this? There's so many facets to our community, so many petals that just make us who we are. Why would you only narrow it to this simple Eurocentric ideology? It's like,
Are you
It's
talking about media? Are you talking about just the media, or are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about the representation of gay couples. And it's very like upsetting to me because I'm like, there's that little part in your brain that's just like, well, will I ever find somebody? Because you don't see people like you. So because you don't see it, it's hard for you to imagine it. So I really feel like there should be inclusion of just all types of relationships that happen in the gay community.
Thank you for all these different perspectives, and there's no way we're going to get to all of the issues, but a great beginner for that. And trying to be mindful of time, I want to get to this last question, open to everyone. Just because we're dealing with the pandemic, everyone is has their different experiences with the pandemic, and it's challenging in very different ways. But in particular, the LGBTQ community is challenged in unique ways. So what do you think those challenges are, and how do you think we can best support the community right now?
I just want to speak on the students because they're on my mind all the time, and we have seen major problems with our LGBTQ students because they are no longer able to go to school, and a lot of times the school is their safe place. This is the place where they get to see their friends who they love and love them. They get to see the Tolerance Club, and they get to see their counselor or their teachers that support them. And they don't get to do that anymore. And a lot of our students come from households where they are still closeted. A lot of them come from households where they're not closeted and their parents don't accept them. You know, story after story. I mean, in my years at Culver City High School, I've heard horror stories of how families treat their LGBTQ students, and to think that they are there 24/7 now and unable to get what they need at school is scary and sad. And that is a unique challenge that we don't really have a solution for because it's a pandemic.
You know, just to bounce off of KO, the trans community is almost going through nearly the same thing, because like the school kids, um, the events and all of the gatherings that we have and all of the different coming togethers that we do, like in our regular not COVID time, are all gone. So for a lot of our community, they're isolated at home. They're also at home with families that are not affirming. um, like the employment rates are dropping, so no one's working. Everyone's having a hard time. Like, it was hard enough as a trans person to get a job before the pandemic, and now, like, it's slim to none, right? um, I think that those communities are also suffering in the same kind of ways, because as an adult, they're stuck 24/7 in the house with family that is telling them that they're not who they are. So it's kind of hard for us to support our adult counterparts as well, because it's a pandemic. Like, how do we remedy this, right? So we do the Zoom support groups and whatnot, and that's all well and good, but sometimes you need that human interaction, that touch. So our folks are suffering too.
Yes, I would say, in some sense, which pandemic? There's so much going on in our world right now, and I can't help but think of the progress that we've made in terms of access to rights at the local and federal level, and how there are still attacks on those rights. And we just saw this with the opening session of the Supreme Court, and that's going to continue. That is absolutely going to continue, and it's going to take on different forms and under different guises, but it's all the same story. And so being ever vigilant, being ever active, and recognizing, I think, that progress has happened, but that it's there's still not only many areas where we need improvement, but that also we can go backwards. things, and that's scary. So, yeah.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, I think equity and inclusion is so important as we look at any of our policy decisions that are going to be made. In Culver City specific, last year was the first year that the city council designated June as Pride Month. So if elected, I'd really want to build on this. There are a lot of families in Culver City that have that are parents of LGBTQ. The parents are. And then also looking at cultural competency trainings for all of the city employees and in our schools. Human Rights Campaign has a municipality index. So looking to see if Culver City can get on that and see where we benchmark in comparison to other cities and what we're doing. Then also looking at trans can work programs. I think these are all important as we look at our LGBTQ policy in the city. But thank you so much to Caleb, to Adam, to Lucky, and Ko for this great conversation today. Enjoy the rest of National Coming Out Day, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you, Freddie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Out there as well.